Part 14. Leader held on for dear life, though the armor's slickness gave little purchase. He looked up as he strained to gain a new handhold on Kicker's helmet, his eyes furtively registering the frantic movement of the aliens above. Mox was four-alarm crazy now. He could feel the weight of the intruder on his back, moving up the ridge of his spine. The machinery responded. Mega doses of stimulant pumped anew. The juggernaut raced forward as the torch arm bent back, already raging. The other arm fired another barrage of 25mm explosives. By the time the torch was clearing Kicker's head, he had pounded through another 2 walls, the squealing aliens seething overhead. They seemed to be gnawing at their own bodies, their corrosive lifeblood pitting the floor beneath them. The flooring gave way as Kicker leaped to the wall, clearing the acid-eaten floor's weakest point. Leader struggled to climb higher, though the acid was pissing through his back. His skull felt raw and blistered as the corrosive gore sprayed onto him. If he could clear the spine, if the first shot made a dent in the head armor, if... The world tipped sideways as the flooring collapsed. The flamethrower lurched backwards over Mach 16's head and poured the fires of hell onto the gnat on his back. "I'm all right, Ears," Point cried. "Get your shit together. We need you. We all need you now." Point cradled his acid-riddled arm. The burns were deep and painful, but his concern was more for the pulse rifle. Checking the corrosive scoring, he leveled the barrel at the scarred nursery door and fired. The rapid fire was no longer rhythmic. Erratic bolts riveted the door, buckling the metal without piercing. "Damn!" "Point!" Ears interrupted, but the attempt was too little, too late. Point barely had time to back against the wall before the ceiling above split asunder. He rolled and fell hard, almost into the path of the berserker as it crashed into his deck. Kicker was a fireball, spitting, shitting, screaming fire in every direction. His right leg corkscrewed with the fall, toppling him through the wall beside him. Point pulled himself over onto his side, every alarm wailing. There was something on Kicker. The battering arm rounded the lip of the crater, sprouting pulse-spitting rifles at the center. Fuselage flared overhead as the shots rippled across and down, pounding the nursery door. Its other arm was bent up and overhead, as if trying to scratch an itch it couldn't reach. Mox's back was aflame, and something was writhing in the blue hell. The torch was suddenly extinguished. The arm's electroprod unit jutted from the barrel, catching the pitiful figure that still clung to the exoskeletal spine, full in the face. The figure stiffened with the jolt, and then fell, limp and horribly blackened. Point saw it all, mouth frozen in a ridiculous grimace, eyes blurred red. Shit-Kicker knew none of it. The gnat was off his back. He could focus his ire exclusively on the hostiles, though they were now 2 floors above him, their blood still intently sprinkling into Kicker's path. He whirled with terrifying speed and accuracy and fired upwards. The creatures began to drop onto his exoskeletal armor, tails stabbing spasmodically. A monstrous sound of screaming metal resounded as the flooring beneath Mox's 2-ton frame began to give. Kicker turned and glared at Point, cocking his arms as if to fire before plunging through the weakened floor to the next deck level below. The aliens began to drop down through the crater, out of sight. Point crawled, hand over hand, like a lost child, to the broken and burned body. "Leader," he whispered, tentatively touching the body. Point struggled to his feet, letting the wall support him as he struggled towards the open nursery before the monsters turned their attention back to him. The soft hissing of the open waste disposal airlock was barely audible over the din from the lower deck. He could feel it more than hear it as he eased his way into the nursery. A baby was crying, its howls muffled by the thundering music. At the center of the cacophony was a man, alone. Point scope fixed on the man's back. His aim was shaky. The acid burns had cut deep. More than just pain and shock had compromised his strength, as tendons and nerves had been cauterized. The music swelled, crescendoed, as the man leaned back and waved his arm drunkenly to emphasize the sweep of the symphony. Something was wrong with him. His back peaked in impossible places, as if he had two broken spines. The nape of his neck bristled with shimmering spaghetti-like knots of tubing splayed against his shoulder blades. His arms seemed distended, preoccupied with erratic scooping motions, a jerky spasmodic labouring over... what? With the baby screaming, where was it? Point couldn't put what he was seeing and hearing together into any coherent picture. The baby's shrieks crescendoed with the music as the man lurched erect and spat blood, the agonized chorus punctuating his pirouette to face Point. Stravinsky, the figure stammered. Jesus, Point, right behind you, Ears implored over the headset. Do him and move. Le sacre du printemps, rite of spring. Point brought his eye up from the scope. Even with the damage to his arm, the idiot loomed at point-blank range before him. He couldn't miss, nor could the scope make sense of the spectacle. Point had to see this with his own naked eyes. Appropriate, don't you think? The man teetered into the light, his eyes glassy and nearly bursting from the sockets. His nose was streaming murky fluids, streaked with blood, mouth smeared with something thick and viscous that ran in yellow threads down onto his shirt. All about him was a sickening weave of IV tubing from multicoloured canisters into gleaming needles, sunken into bloodied cloth, swollen and bruised flesh, into veins and nipples and crotch. Play chess? The madman slurred. Richards thought he could take me too. Kotlow! Ears bellowed through the headset. It's Kotlow! Take my queen! Point's eyes widened as they fixed on the centre of the man's chest. His shirt bulged unnaturally. Something was writhing beneath the spattered fabric, something small and wild. A hissing, louder than that of the open airlock, from behind. Point, get out! Another hiss. The hiss within the hiss, wide to strike. Point, no man, gotta get out man, go! The idiot, Kotlow, clutched to hold the creature that writhed under his shirt, his mouth distended. Wish upon a star, Jiminy. The trigger kissed, once, twice, 3 times, as Kotlow's temple splashed ruddy snot and bone. His shoulder ruptured in an arc of iridescent chemical-tinged blood. The alien behind Point struck, its extended tongue tearing effortlessly through the helmet's metal to taste the soft gravy yolk that lay under the bone. "15 heads in 15 corridors. They were the safeguard, the vital link that would be maintained if Ears were killed. Their orbs continued to function properly, feeding visuals and statistics to Bort in the command module. The radio link, however, was inexplicably severed. 15 simulacra irised their mesh jaws wide and bellowed Ears' grief into the very marrow of Toddlab LXI's interior, echoing into Bort's command module. They were lost now, shorn of their fist and shorn of their brain. Leader and Point dead. Ears was lost. But the monitors unflinchingly recorded it all. Bort shut down the link with Ears for the moment. He had to save Rat. So close, so close. Only a moment, and she would be safe.